Glad you could join us today on EdFile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. Mounting evidence shows that advancement in gender equality could have a profoundly positive impact on social and environmental well-being. Now let's break it down. Rural women make up 43% of the agricultural labor force and, compared to men, are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 due to their work in the informal sector and the lack of access to productive resources, services, technologies, markets, and finances. But when women are given equal access as men, they can be incredibly resilient to shocks and be able to support their families and communities. We'll show you how this is playing out in Niger State. Just stay with us. Thousands of businesses across the world have been forced to close or have seen profits slump due to COVID-19 restrictions. But for the rice processing women of Kontagora in Niger State, not only have they survived, but their business has thrived with profit up by 40%. COVID-19 may have altered the way they work, but it cannot mask the fact that business is booming. While other rice producers had to stop working due to the lockdown, Asabe and her fellow rice entrepreneurs drew on their production and marketing skills and introduced a rota system that meant they could keep going throughout.
And how do we do it? One, we have to observe the social distances. So we worked in shifts. While others work in the morning, others in the evening.
Asabe and her team used to supply rice to the local schools, but when they shut due to the pandemic, one door may have closed, but another one opened.
So we've not been out of production since the COVID-19. Instead, we work more harder to meet up the demand because the demand is so high.
Closed international borders meant that the market was no longer flooded with cheap imported rice. The result is that the price of their rice has gone up over 40%. But a decade ago, it was a very different story for Asabe. She used to be a civil servant. But after her husband fell ill, she couldn't afford to pay the bills or feed her family. Asabe began processing rice on her kitchen floor in 2011. But it's only since joining the Tudunwada cooperative 4 years ago that things improved dramatically. Set up with financial support from the Nigerian government and the United Nations Agency, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, the Value Chain Development Program has given her training in marketing and finance and access to this rice processing center. Here, she and other women from the cooperative can use equipment such as steaming tanks, a parboiling shed, and destoners. This has meant she can process 10 times as much rice as before. The new processing methods have also transformed the lives of other rice producers, like Aishetu, a widow with 12 children. She had been producing rice for 35 years without making any profit.
At that time, we were selling our milled rice at the old market. Then, it was impossible to make sales of 20,000 naira in a week, no matter how hard we labored. So by the time we deduct our expenses, we are left with nothing.
The project has been so successful that many of the women have become local millionaires. Each woman is now earning on average 6 million naira a year, more than senior civil servants in the region. They are able to send their children to school and buy homes and cars. The women's resilience and continued productivity during COVID has also earned them a good reputation and new buyers in the local market.
I've been buying it for less than a year. The rice is, the quality is very, very good. The quality is okay. And the grains, they are well prepared, and it is very good when cooking.
Their productivity has not only benefited the market sellers who can offer a better product, but also the farmers who receive extra money for their crop. Now Asabe and her fellow entrepreneurs want other local women to share in their success and plans to build another small rice processing factory, helping others in the local economy.
My plan is to build that place for them. They are women. I went through what they were going through now, so I had that feeling. I'm thinking of how do I help them to come up with their problem. That is my mission.
The Tudunwada Cooperative is one of several rice processing groups supported by IFAD in the area. Part of the Value Chain Action Plan, it serves as the basis for rolling out sustainable activities to reduce poverty and accelerate economic growth. The objective is to sustainably enhance rural incomes and food security. The target groups include 15,000 smallholder farming households, 1,680 processors, and 800 traders. Globally, the evidence has been mounting in linking gender equality and enhanced environmental outcomes.
Today, COVID has shown us that a country that does not plan for the future is a country that has not planned at all.
Countries with more women in their parliament are more likely to set aside protected land areas and ratify international environmental treaties. In fact, evidence reveals that there is a correlation between environment and gender. When gender inequality is high, forest depletion, air pollution, and other measures of environmental degradation are also high.
I declare the NGO Forum on Women, Beijing 1995 open!
More than 20 years have passed since the 1995 Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing laid out an expansive vision and body of commitments for achieving gender equality, women's empowerment, and sustainable development. In the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 2015, governments reaffirmed the Beijing Platform for Action as a foundation for sustainable development and made a commitment to integrate gender perspectives in sustainable development policies and programs. At the high-level event celebrating 25 years since the landmark Beijing Conference on Women, United Nations Secretary-General António Guterres called for equal representation of women in leadership positions.
The systems and structures of our world, based on millennia of male domination, are holding women back in all areas with serious consequences for everyone. And COVID-19 demonstrates that we urgently need a strong push to meet the unfulfilled promise of Beijing. This is fundamentally a question of power. And so it starts with equal representation of women in leadership positions, in governments, boardrooms, in climate negotiations, and at the peace table. Everywhere decisions are taken that affect people's lives. Looking forward, we need transformative, women-led changes to the failed structures and frameworks exploited by the pandemic. That is the only way we will implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and achieve lives of dignity and opportunity for all.
The United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women, called Action for Equality, Development and Peace, brought together the world leaders to discuss and agree on a comprehensive plan to achieve global legal equality, known as the Beijing Platform for Action.
Over her
25 years later, the Beijing Plus 25 meeting convened on the 1st of October 2020 was an opportunity for the United Nations leadership and heads of state and governments to take a stock on progress made over the last 25 years and to assess the challenges the world still needs to overcome in achieving the full gender equality.
Responsibility to make space, to listen.
The President of the United Nations General Assembly asked world leaders one of the toughest questions many of them have continually failed to answer.
I have to ask the question, when will we reach full gender equality? In 2030? On the 50th anniversary of the Fourth World Conference for Women? On the centenary of the United Nations? Why wait? Let us take action today to ensure equality tomorrow. It's up to you. It's up to all of us.
Fulfilling the ambitious vision outlined in the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, adopted at the conference, will require targeted measures. 1 woman in 3 still experiences violence in her lifetime. Every year, 12 million girls marry before the age of 18. In 2017, 137 women were killed daily by a family member. The World Bank estimates it could take 150 years to achieve gender parity in lifetime earned income, and that closing that gap will generate $172 trillion in human capital wealth.
The disproportionate impact of COVID on women in society and in the front lines, where women are the majority of those saving life, is an epoch moment. The women of the world believe in the UN and solidarity of nations, and that we, the peoples, all together can change the future. It is in our hands.
To be sure, the Beijing Declaration spurred 274 legal and regulatory reforms in 131 countries. At the founding of the United Nations in 1945, there were no women heads of state or government. In 1995, there were 12, and today there are 22.
1 woman in 3.
Speaking from the podium of the United Nations General Assembly, the executive director of the United Nations Population Fund said protecting women's and sexual and reproductive rights is essential for their empowerment.
UNFPA data show that only 55% of women worldwide can make their own decisions about sexual and reproductive health and about contraception. 1 woman in 3 experiences the trauma of violence over her lifetime. And last year alone, 280,000 adolescents and young women became infected with HIV. We need urgent action, strong political support, and targeted investments. Otherwise, gains achieved painstakingly over decades are at risk. Now is the time to scale up investments, and we urge everyone to back up words and policies with deeds and with funding for programs and services that transform women's lives. Investing in women and girls is not just a question of rights. It's also smart economics with benefits to society many, many times the cost.
At another event, marking 20 years since the adoption of United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, Secretary General António Guterres said its adoption was a groundbreaking step for women's leadership and participation.
Women's leadership and decision-making is not a favor to women. It is essential to peace and progress for all. We cannot hope to turn the climate crisis around, reduce social divisions, or make sustained peace without the full contributions of all of society. Women's leadership in all spheres will be critical to finding the fastest, safest route through the pandemic and to building a more peaceful and stable future. For the women mediators, peace builders, human rights defenders, and essential workers who risk their lives to build peace. For the millions of women, men, girls, and boys whose hopes for peace and security rest on more equal and just societies, we cannot wait another 20 years to implement the Women, Peace and Security agenda.
The Minister of State in the Federal Foreign Office of Germany said gender equality is not only about fairness and human rights, it is also about security and conflict prevention. She underscored that sexual and gender-based violence are not an inevitable byproduct of war. Rather, they are crimes that must be punished and abolished.
20 years and 9 hard-won Security Council resolutions later, the implementation of the WPS agenda continues to be too weak. Women are still excluded from peace processes. Their rights and interests continue to be ignored when building post-conflict societies. So let me be frank, as a global community, we have not lived up to our commitment.
Adopted on the 31st of October 2000, the resolution set out a mandate for the United Nations member states to protect women and girls in conflict zones and to involve women in the full range of decision-making on issues of peace and security. Sun drying was the only way to preserve produce for farmers of Adogo. a community in Mbaya district in Benue State. Local women would leave fruits and vegetables on the ground to dehydrate them for future use. But sun drying brings problems. It's weather dependent. It exposes the food to contaminants like dust and insects, and it's surprisingly time consuming, as the women need to guard their produce from scavenging animals, both wild and domestic. In Adogo, the smallholder farmers faced a lose-lose situation. Either inefficiently dry their product in the sun or sell it at giveaway prices before it rotted. All too often, the food went bad just because the farmers lacked a safe, sanitary and reliable method of preserving their produce. The Women Environmental Program then introduced a simple construction similar to a greenhouse that will not only allow produce to be dried quickly, safely and hygienically, but which had already been successfully implemented in Malawi, where it was used to dry fish.
Some times back, I came to this community, actually for a burial, and it was on a market day. And when I came, I saw that they farm a lot of tomatoes and a lot of pepper. The tomatoes and pepper were in abundance. But by the time we were going, I discovered that the women did not sell these tomatoes, and they were ready to give it away at a price of just 20 naira for a full big basket of tomato. And that struck me, and I started thinking.
The Adogo women have reported that their produce dry faster in the solar dryer tent than it did outdoors, and that the nutritional properties of the produce are better retained. The solar tent dryer is cost-effective, easy to build, requiring only semi-skilled labor, and suitable for rural areas of Nigeria where subsistence farming is highly concentrated.
So we have plans to upscale this to every part of the country, especially for those that are interested. They have a management team on ground, and the chief is the chief security of the place. But apart from that, they have a women cooperative society that is on ground. So for any person that comes to come and dry, they know which one are your products. So there are people that are monitoring it. As you take it and move, another person will come. The highest this dryer takes is about 2 days. So they monitor each person that comes to come and put their products. So there's no question of stealing or coming to take another person's products.
The Women Environmental Program says the widespread use of solar dryer tents would have a huge impact, enhancing the storage of produce during harvest and reducing post-harvest losses, all of which mean an increase in the availability of food and a major reduction in food waste and, of course, less stress for the women. There are also examples from around the world on how women are leading responses on climate change by modifying growing patterns, developing water harvesting and soil conservation initiatives, managing disaster risk reduction and response plans, and adopting consumption patterns that reduce the footprint of households and communities. Women leaders globally are working to strengthen their country's effort to halt environmental degradation and improve the lives of women and their families. In a backyard in Zimbabwe's capital, Harare, a 50-year-old mother of two is using hydroponics to grow vegetables for some of Harare's top restaurants, defying drought and an economic crisis that have left millions needing food aid. Venensia Mukarati, whose day job is accountancy, always had a passion for farming, but no land on which to plant. Just over 2 years ago, she did a web search on how to grow vegetables on the deck of her Harare house, importing a small hydroponics system from Cape Town for $900 that enables plants to grow soluble nutrients from water. She now works in a 46-square-meter greenhouse where water flows in a maze of pipes decked with plants.
Hydroponics farming saves water. And I really enjoy it because I don't have to worry about the water. I don't have water here, so I have to buy water. But because it's hydroponics, I'm saving water by 90%. The other reason why I opted for hydroponics farming is the growth rate of hydroponics. It's faster, and then I can harvest even much faster than the soil-based farming.
Her immediate desire was for fresh vegetables for the family as the country's economic fortunes deteriorated and grocery store prices spiraled. But she quickly realized her pastime could be a profitable venture. She now makes $1,100 a month in a country where some government workers get just $76. In hydroponics farming, water is conserved because it is reused multiple times. Hydroponically grown plants also require no pesticides because there are no soil-borne diseases.
If I was farming in a conventional way of soil, I wasn't going to produce as much as I'm producing. Because when we are farming in soil, you need more water, and then the production rate will be less than what is happening in hydroponics farming. When we are doing hydroponics farming, your crop grows faster by a third, which means about 33%, and you tend to harvest it in a shorter period than when you are doing conventional farming, when you are farming in the soil. So hydroponics farming helps so much, especially when there is no water or where there is no rain, because it saves water, less time of production, and you can produce as much as you want, even on a space which is limited, like in this farm.
Much of southern Africa is in its worst drought in more than a century, with crops failing and some 45 million people in need of food aid. The region's temperatures are rising at twice the global average, says the International Panel on Climate Change, spurring the need for innovative ideas to get food on tables. It takes 6 weeks for Venensia to harvest vegetables such as lettuce compared to 10 weeks if the crop is grown in the soil. She initially grew 140 plants per cycle. Now she produces 2,600, including lettuce, cucumbers, spinach and herbs, in 2 greenhouses fed by a makeshift system using gutter pipes from the roof.
Straight from her hydro farm.
Lesley Lang, a restaurant owner, buys Venensia's produce twice a week.
Her lettuce is of such a high quality, which I use a lot of it, so I've had her supplying me for over a year now, twice a week, in bulk amounts. She packages it beautifully. It's always amazingly fresh, has no blemishes on it whatsoever, doesn't even need me to put it into a special liquid to make sure that it's completely fumigated. It's the best lettuce I've ever had the pleasure of buying in Zimbabwe.
We have a problem with water. In fact, the whole world has a problem with water. Hydroponics is very water sensitive. The amount of water used is a fraction from normal agricultural purposes. What we prefer also in the market is that the product comes with its roots on. Therefore, it has a much longer shelf life. The customer can take the product home and put it in water, and it will continue to live and to thrive.
Venensia hopes to quadruple production from June by constructing bigger greenhouses on 2,600 square meters of land on the outskirts of Harare. Last year, she began training others to do the same, designing a hydroponic starter pack, which she sells for $200. In cities around the world, women leaders are hard at work improving sustainability by promoting bike-sharing programs, safe public transport and urban trees. While the rural counterparts work to restore landscapes and improve access to clean sources of energy. If not managed properly, environment projects can actually spur gender inequality. It's a connection that anyone working in the environment and sustainable development space really have to keep in mind. But that's our program for the week. Thank you for watching. Do check our YouTube channel for this episode and other episodes of the program. From me, Ayola Kasim, and the crew here in Lagos. It's bye for now.